Chapter 1: The Sick Whale. Rain lashed the deck of the RSV Triton, each drop exploding against steel plating with the force of flung gravel. Below, the sea churned, a gray, heaving expanse indistinguishable from the sky save for the churning white caps. The salvage and recovery vessel pitched, a sickening lurch that sent loose equipment skittering across the wet deck. Inside the cramped briefing room, the air hung thick with the smell of ozone, damp neoprene, and stale coffee. Warden Kyra stood before a flickering monitor displaying grainy sonar images. Her scarred face was set, eyes narrowed as she tracked the sluggish, unnatural shape suspended deep beneath them. "Target confirmed," she stated, her voice cutting through the engine thrum and the storm's howl. "Designation: Experimental Stealth Submarine Hades. Went dark 7 years ago during deep-phase trials off the Mariana Trench. Resurfaced 3 days ago, 500 nautical miles northeast of Guam. Drifting, minimal power signature detected. No comms response." Around the small table sat the rest of the hastily assembled rapid assessment team. Dr. Arin, her gaze sharp and analytical behind functional spectacles, tapped a stylus against a datapad displaying biological hazard symbols. Minimal power readings are inconsistent with life support for a Lowe's Angels-class derivative, even one heavily modified like Hades. Unless something else is generating the signature, Kyra finished, nodding curtly. "Precisely. Intel suggests the experimental drive involved. Dimensional phasing, high risk of environmental contamination, structural instability, and unknown biological factors." She gestured towards the sonar blob. "It doesn't look right. Sonar returns are inconsistent. Parts of the hull show anomalous density readings almost. Organic scattering." "Organic." Mole Gren, the engineer, grunted, wiping grease from his thick hands onto an already stained jumpsuit. He squinted at the display. "Define organic, Warden. You talking algae bloom or something the size of a blue whale glommed onto the hull?" "Unknown," Kyra replied flatly. "Which is why we're going. Primary objective: board the Hades, assess internal conditions, determine the fate of the crew, and evaluate the status of the experimental drive system. Secondary: if feasible and safe, secure drive core data and key components. Tertiary: if the vessel is deemed an uncontrollable biohazard. Plant demolition charges, withdraw, and scuttle." Cable Jin, the youngest, nervously adjusted his comms headset. "We have schematics for the Hades, the original ones at least. Standard Lowe's Angels layout with significant modifications to engineering, sonar suite, and aft compartments for the drive housing," Kyra confirmed. "Unit 7 has the full theoretical loadout." The android, Observer Unit 7, sat perfectly still at the end of the table. Its polished chrome face reflected the flickering screen, optical sensors glowing a soft blue. "Affirmative," its synthesized voice stated, devoid of inflection. "Schematics loaded. Internal sensor package prepared for atmospheric, biological, and radiological analysis upon ingress." Arin leaned forward. "The original crew complement was 135. Any indication of survivors?" Kyra's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Negative. No life signs detected via standard thermal or biosignature scans from Triton. Doesn't mean anything definitive at this depth and with potential interference. Assume hostiles until proven otherwise. Standard biocontamination protocols are in effect. Level 4 suits, sealed environment. Gren grunted again. Fun house. All right, Warden, how we getting in? Thing looks sealed up tighter than a drum. Hades surfaced partially bow up. Forward torpedo tubes 1 and 3 are above the waterline. External hatches appear jammed open, possibly damaged during ascent. Internal hatches are likely sealed. We cut through. Kyra pointed to a diagram overlaid on the sonar image. Descent via tethered submersible cage. We deploy onto the forward casing. Establish entry point Alpha via plasma torch at the number 2 tube's inner hatch assembly. Gren, you're on the torch. Jin, establish localized comms relay and atmospheric monitoring as soon as we breach. Arin, immediate bioscan. Unit 7, record everything. Monitor structural integrity near the cut point. I'll take point, standard diamond formation once inside. She swept her gaze across them. Questions. Silence filled only by the groan of the Triton's hull and the storm. Good, gear up. Deployment in 20. The submersible cage plunged through the violent surface chop, leaving the storm's fury behind for the crushing, silent dark of the deep. Inside, the 4 humans and 1 android were rocked by currents, the world outside their viewport a swirling void illuminated only by the cage's powerful floodlights. Jin swallowed hard, eyes wide, tracking the depth gauge. Gren methodically checked the plasma cutter's charge indicator. Arin reviewed potential pathogen profiles on her wrist-mounted display. Kyra stared impassively ahead, gripped tight on the heavy pulse rifle resting across her armored knees. Unit 7 remained motionless, its optical sensors aimed at the approaching bulk of the Hades. It emerged from the gloom like a dead leviathan. The submarine was immense, far larger than the schematics implied. Its black, anechoic coating was rent and torn in places, revealing scarred metal beneath. But it was the other things that drew the eye, that made the sonar readings make a sickening kind of sense. Vast swathes of the hull were encrusted with something that wasn't corrosion or marine growth. It looked like calcified grayish-white tissue, ridged and porous like diseased bone or aberrant coral, spreading in tumorous blooms. Patches of slimy, phosphorescent growth pulsed with faint, internal light, resembling clusters of unhealthy fungi. Tendrils of dark, kelp-like material waved sluggishly in the currents, anchored deep within fissures in the hull. Devils, Gren breathed, his voice tight over the comms. What in the hell is that? Analysis suggests extensive biointegration with unknown abyssal organisms, Unit 7 reported calmly. Structural integrity appears compromised in affected areas. Recommend avoiding direct contact with external growths. Noted, Kyra clipped. Jin, keep that external comm link solid. If this goes sideways, Triton needs to know. Why yes, Warden. Signals stable for now. The cage maneuvered closer, its floodlights revealing the forward torpedo tubes. As Kyra had stated, tubes 1 and 3 were dark maws, their outer doors twisted and partially ripped from their hinges. Tube 2's outer door was intact but sealed. The cage settled onto the casing near Tube 2 with a clang that echoed strangely against the corrupted hull. "All right, people, we're on the clock," Kyra ordered as the cage door hissed open. "Gren, start the cut. Jin, deploy the relay beacon. Arin, proximity scans. Unit 7, close watch." Stepping onto the hull felt wrong. The surface wasn't solid steel. It yielded slightly under their heavy boots, coated in a thin, greasy film. The air, recycled within their suits, suddenly tasted metallic, stale. The phosphorescent patches pulsed nearby, casting eerie light. Gren knelt by the inner hatch assembly of Tube 2, the plasma cutter humming to life with a fierce hiss. Bright, molten sparks showered the deck as he began tracing the outline of their entry point. Jin secured a tripod beacon to the casing, its small antenna dish rotating slowly. Arin swept a handheld scanner across the hull, her brow furrowing behind her faceplate. Detecting complex protein chains and unidentifiable microbial life within the growths, she reported. Extremely high levels of unfamiliar extremophile bacteria. No airborne contaminants detected yet, but maintained suit integrity. Suddenly, a section of the coral-like growth near Gren pulsed violently. A thin, chitinous limb, impossibly long and jointed like an insect's leg tipped with a needle-sharp point, shot out from a crevice. It wasn't aimed at Gren, but at the plasma cutter's power cable snaking across the deck. "Contact!" Kyra yelled, raising her pulse rifle. Before she could fire, the limb pierced the thick cable. Sparks erupted. The plasma cutter died with a pathetic whine. Gren scrambled away, son of a powers cut. Another section of the wall seemed to ripple. An eye, milky white and reptilian, swiveled open within the calcified mass, fixing on them for a heartbeat before sliding shut again. The limb retracted swiftly, vanishing back into the shadows of the corrupted hull. "Unit 7, did you record?" Kyra demanded, rifle tracking the spot where the limb had appeared. "Affirmative. Visual and multispectral data captured. Analysis suggests a deliberately targeted action against mission equipment. The entity appears integrated within the hull structure." Arin moved closer, scanner active. "Fascinating, a defensive reaction, territorial, the limb structure, not consistent with any known deep-sea phylum." "Forget fascinating, Doc," Gren snapped, grabbing a heavy pry bar from his kit. "We need a way in. That thing poked my torch dead." Kyra surveyed the scene. The open maw of Tube 1 was nearby. Its inner hatch would likely be sealed too, but maybe damaged. "Plan B, Gren, with me. Check Tube 1's inner hatch. If it's weakened, we pry. Jin, stay on comms. Arin, Unit 7, maintain overwatch here. Watch those damn walls." The interior of Torpedo Tube 1 was pitch black and slick with viscous slime. Kyra's helmet lamp cut a swathe through the darkness, revealing scoring along the tube walls and more of the strange, fungal patches near the inner hatch. Gren wedged the tip of the massive pry bar into a slight gap where the hatch met the bulkhead. "Looks like something tried to get out. Or maybe in," Gren muttered, putting his shoulder into the bar. Metal groaned in protest. "It's warped. Might give." He strained, muscles bunching under the heavy suit. Kyra added her weight. There was a screech of tortured metal, then a sharp crack. The hatch sprung inward a few inches, releasing a puff of air that smelled indescribably foul, like stagnant seawater decay and something acrid, chemical. "Got it," Gren gasped, widening the gap. Kyra shone her light through the opening. Darkness, silence. The stench intensified. "Jin, Arin, Unit 7, regroup on me. We have ingress." They squeezed through the gap one by one into a cramped torpedo handling room. Emergency lights flickered weakly overhead, casting long, distorted shadows. Control panels were shattered, wires dangled like entrails, and everything was coated in the same greasy film as the outer hull. More alarmingly, the pale, phosphorescent fungus, the mycelial creep, as Arin had begun calling it, grew in thick patches across the deckhead and snaked down the bulkheads in intricate patterns. It pulsed faintly, rhythmically. "Atmosphere analysis," Kyra ordered. "Nitrogen, 76%. Oxygen, 19%. Argon, 0.9%, Unit 7 reported. Trace elements include methane, hydrogen sulfide, and complex unidentified airborne spores at significant concentration. Recommend maintaining sealed environment." Arin swept her scanner. The spores originate from the fungal growth. Density increases further into the vessel. Biological readings: chaotic, faint, localized biosignatures detected but source indeterminate. Possible dormant organisms or sensor interference. "All right," Kyra said, activating her rifle's underslung lamp. Its beam cut through the oppressive gloom. Standard sweep formation. Jin tried to access local comms or security feeds. Gren, watch our 6. Unit 7, map our path. Arin, keep scanning. Move slow, stay alert, remember the mission. They moved out of the torpedo room into a narrow corridor. The pulsing of the mycelial creep seemed louder here, casting enough light to see the decay. Water dripped somewhere. A low hum vibrated through the deck plating, the minimal power signature they detected. As they passed a sealed doorway marked Crew Berthing Sea, a faint scratching sound came from within. Kyra froze, signaling halt. They listened. Silence. Then scratching again, faster this time, frantic, followed by a wet, tearing sound. Gren hefted his pry bar. Jin shrunk slightly behind Kyra. Arin tilted her head, scanner aimed at the door. "Localized biosignature detected within the compartment," Unit 7 stated. "Small mammal parameters, elevated heart rate." "Rat," Gren scoffed, relaxing slightly. "Place is probably crawling with M." Kyra didn't relax. She slowly approached the door, rifle ready. The scratching stopped. A low, guttural clicking began, rhythmic and chillingly unlike any rat. It echoed wetly from behind the steel. Suddenly, with incredible force, something slammed against the inside of the door, leaving a heavy dent radiating outwards. The clicking intensified, growing louder, closer to the door seams. Then silence again. Utter, profound silence, broken only by the dripping water and the soft, rhythmic pulse of the mycelial creep coating the corridor walls like diseased veins. They stood frozen, breaths held, listening to the dead air of the corrupted submarine. The entry hatch behind them felt worlds away. They were inside the sick whale now. Chapter 2. Echoes in the steel. Silence pressed in, thick and heavy, after the violent impact on the crew berthing sea door. The rhythmic clicking ceased as abruptly as it began. Only the faint, pervasive pulse of the mycelial creep and the drip, drip, drip of unseen water broke the quiet. Kyra kept her pulse rifle aimed squarely at the dented steel, finger resting near the trigger guard. Gren shifted his weight, the massive pry bar held ready. Jin fidgeted, his helmet lamp beam dancing nervously across the corrupted walls. Status. Kyra's voice was a low command over the comms. Biosignature within the compartment, fluctuating, Arin reported, her scanner still active. Heart rate elevated, then dropped significantly. Now, indistinct, minimal metabolic activity detected. Playing possum, Gren muttered, or it punched itself out. Or it wasn't alone, Jin whispered, shrinking closer to Gren's bulky frame. Kyra considered the dented door. Breaching it meant diverting resources, time, and potentially facing an unknown threat in confined quarters. Their primary objective lay deeper within the Hades. Negative, she decided. We don't have time for sideshows unless they become direct threats. Mark the door, Unit 7. We bypass. Stay sharp. Whatever in their nose we're here. Acknowledged. Compartment designated potential hostile zone Alpha. Unit 7 replied, its internal processors mapping the location. They moved past the door, stepping carefully over snaking fungal tendrils and patches of greasy film. Kyra led, rifle sweeping ahead. Gren covered their rear, occasionally glancing back at the silent door. The corridor stretched before them, curving gently. Emergency lights flickered intermittently, throwing stark shadows that seemed to writhe in their peripheral vision. The air, filtered through their suits, carried the persistent stench of decay and brine, now underscored by a faint coppery tang. Blood. The mycelial creep became denser here. It coated the bulkheads almost entirely, its phosphorescent glow providing the main illumination. It pulsed in a slow, hypnotic rhythm, like a diseased heart beating within the submarine's walls. Arin paused, running her scanner over a particularly thick patch. The fungal network appears. Interconnected, she murmured. Sophisticated structure. Possible rudimentary signal transmission across the colony. The spores it releases. Analysis suggests complex psychoactive properties, potentially mutagenic with prolonged high-dose exposure. Keep your distance, Doctor, Kyra warned without turning. Don't need anyone getting spacey. Of course, Warden, just remarkable adaptation. As Arin spoke, a section of the bulkhead beside Jin shimmered. For a fraction of a second, the fungal coating seemed to pull away, revealing not steel, but something yielding like packed earth or damp clay. Two milky white orbs, unmistakably eyes, opened within the substance, fixing on Jin. Before he could react, a slender, multi-jointed limb, similar to the one that attacked the cutter cable but coated in the same grayish film as the wall, darted out. It didn't aim for Jin himself, but for the spare battery pack clipped to his waist belt. Jin yelped, stumbling sideways. The limb snagged the pack, ripping it free with surprising strength. The eyes blinked sluggishly. The limb, battery pack clutched in its needle-sharp tip, retracted smoothly back into the wall. The fungal growth seemed to flow back over the spot, leaving only a faint ripple. The entire event lasted less than 3 seconds. "Contact wall," Jin stammered, scrambling away from the bulkhead, hands flailing. "It took my spare pack right out of the wall." Kyra and Gren spun around. Warden Kyra raised her rifle, aiming at the spot Jin indicated. Arin directed her scanner. "Anything," Kyra barked. "Negative thermal signature," Arin reported. "Residual biotraces consistent with previous encounter, but dissipating rapidly. It's as if the wall itself." "Integrated entity confirmed," Unit 7 stated calmly. "Designation: Watcher. Observed behavior suggests resource acquisition or tactical disruption rather than direct assault in this instance." Gren swore, running a hand over his helmet. "First the torch cable, now batteries. What the hell are these things? Magpies from hell." "They're testing us," Kyra said, her voice grim. "Probing weaknesses, assessing equipment, stay clear of the bulkheads. Assume any surface could be hostile. Jin, report equipment loss." "J, just the spare power cell, Warden. Main pack is secure." "All right, keep moving. Eyes open." Kyra's gaze lingered on the seamless wall where the limb had vanished. The Watcher, another variable, another threat vector. They continued deeper, the low hum of machinery growing slightly louder. They passed more sealed doors, mess hall, sick bay, junior officer quarters, each marked with Unit 7's internal hazard mapping. Some doors were buckled outwards, others inwards. Dark stains, suspiciously fluid-like, marred the deck plating in several areas. The corridor opened into a wider junction area. Several passageways branched off. A central ladder ascended into darkness and descended into a flooded section below, oily water sloshing gently. Control panels here were utterly destroyed, ripped open with brute force, exposing tangled wires and scorched circuitry. More unsettling were the crude markings scrawled on the walls in what looked like dried blood or organic paste. Symbols, neither human nor recognizable, overlapping territorial slashes. And bones, scattered heaps of them tucked into corners or piled against bulkheads. Mostly small rats, likely mutated or otherwise, but among them were larger fragments. Ribs, vertebrae, pieces of skull. Some looked disturbingly human, gnawed and cracked open. "Sweet mother," Jin gagged, averting his gaze. Gren nudged a fractured femur with his boot. "Looks like the crew didn't just disappear. They got recycled," he spat. "Cannibals." Arin knelt, carefully extending a sampling tool towards a bone fragment. Significant modification apparent. Bone density altered, evidence of atypical marrow extraction. Kyra surveyed the junction. "This confirms the hypothesis. Original crew mutated turned predatory. Resource scarcity likely drove them to cannibalism. Assume extreme aggression, pack behavior possible." She pointed towards the least damaged passageway marked Engineering Access Corridor. "That's our route. Drive core schematics place it aft." Suddenly, a high-pitched chittering echoed from the corridor ahead. It wasn't mechanical. It was organic, sharp, and multiplied rapidly, bouncing off the steel walls. "Contacts," Kyra snapped, bringing her rifle up. "Multiple signals." From the darkness of the engineering access corridor, shapes emerged. They moved with an unnatural, skittering gait. Low to the ground, segmented bodies covered in patches of glistening, chitinous exoskeleton fused crudely with tattered remnants of navy blue uniforms. Extra limbs, resembling those of crabs or spiders, propelled them forward at alarming speed, clicking against the deck. Their heads were horrifically altered, faces split or distended, eyes multifaceted or stalked. Scuttlers. Maybe 5 or 6 of them. Scuttler brood, Kyra identified, firing a controlled burst from her pulse rifle. Blue energy bolts slammed into the lead creature, staggering it. It shrieked, a sound like tearing metal, but kept coming. "Engage," Gren roared, bracing his pry bar like a weapon. Jin fumbled with his sidearm, firing wildly. Arin ducked behind a shattered console, scanner still active. Unit 7 stepped forward, deploying a small sonic emitter from its chassis. A high-frequency pulse washed through the junction. The scuttlers recoiled, chittering in agitation, clawed hands going to their malformed heads. "Sonic pulse effective," Unit 7 reported. "Disorientation achieved, duration limited." "Press the attack," Kyra commanded, firing again, aiming for limb joints. Another scuttler went down, thrashing, its crab-like legs scrabbling uselessly. Gren charged forward, bringing the heavy pry bar down with crushing force on the head of a third creature. There was a sickening crunch of chitin and bone. One scuttler, smaller but faster, dodged the sonic pulse's main effect and darted towards Jin, its multi-jointed limbs carrying it across the wall in a terrifying scramble. Jin screamed, backpedaling, his shots going wide. Before the creature could reach him, Kyra pivoted and fired a precise shot, blowing off one of its primary walking limbs. It tumbled from the wall, landing in a heap, still twitching. The remaining 2 scuttlers hesitated, their pack broken. They exchanged rapid clicks, then turned and fled back into the darkness of the engineering corridor, their skittering echoing away. Silence descended again, broken by Jin's ragged breathing and the fizzing crackle where Kyra's shot had hit the wall near the fallen scuttler. The air tasted even fouler. "Hostiles neutralized or retreated," Unit 7 stated, retracting its sonic emitter. "Check your ammo, check your gear," Kyra ordered, scanning the junction, rifle still raised. "Report injuries." "Clear," Gren grunted, wiping gore from his pry bar onto the deck. "Shaken but clear," Jin managed, reloading his sidearm with trembling hands. "No injuries," Arin confirmed, emerging from behind the console. She cautiously approached one of the downed scuttlers, scanner already working. Remarkable hybridization. Crustacean DNA seamlessly integrated. Note the reinforced carapace fused with standard issue uniform fragments. "Save the biology lesson, Doc," Kyra interrupted, nudging the twitching scuttler with her boot. It spasmed weakly. She put a final pulse round through its head. "They hunt in packs. Where there's a few, there's more. Gren, secure this junction. Rig a proximity mine on that engineering corridor entrance. Jin, deploy another comms booster here. Unit 7, Arin, analyze the fallen. Quickly. We need to know their weaknesses." As Gren set the mine and Jin worked on the booster, Kyra watched the dark mouth of the corridor where the scuttlers had retreated. The silence felt predatory now. The brief, violent clash was just a probe, a skirmish. The real inhabitants of the Hades knew they were here, and they were hungry. Arin worked swiftly, taking tissue samples, scanning internal structures. Primitive nervous system dominates, she reported. Highly developed olfactory and vibration senses. Limited visual acuity, likely rely on movement and sound. Exoskeleton provides significant protection, but joints and ventral surfaces appear vulnerable. Sonic frequencies caused neurological distress. Confirmed, Unit 7 added. Optimal disruption frequency calculated at 28.5 kHz. Recommend utilizing sonic pulses strategically to disorient or herd hostile elements. Good Gren mindset. Armed and ready, Warden. Anything comes back down that hall, it gets a nasty surprise. All right, we need to keep moving. Which way now? Kyra looked at the remaining passageways. One led towards presumed command center access, another deeper into crew quarters. Unit 7 projected a holographic overlay onto the deck. Based on schematics and current position, optimal route to engineering section remains through the mined corridor. Alternative routes involve traversing heavily compromised crew sectors or ascending to potentially unstable upper decks. Kyra frowned, backtracking into the scuttler's path even mined felt wrong. There has to be another way, access shafts, maintenance tunnels. Cross-referencing. Unit 7 paused. Secondary maintenance crawlway accessible via crew mess hall, designated corridor Gamma 7. Connects to engineering lower levels. Structural integrity uncertain. Kyra nodded slowly. Okay, new plan, we take Gamma 7. Avoids doubling back, might be less guarded. Lead the way, Unit 7. They moved towards the mess hall corridor. The mycelial creep pulsed on the walls, its faint light seeming to dim and brighten in time with the distant, rhythmic thrumming from the ship's heart. As they passed the junction's edge, Kyra glanced up at a dark ventilation grill near the ceiling. She couldn't be sure, but for a fleeting moment she thought she saw movement within the shadows. Not the skittering of a scuttler, but something slower, more deliberate. A pair of pale, intelligent eyes adapted to utter darkness, observing them, assessing. The tactician. The feeling passed. There was nothing there but shadows and the corrupted steel of the dead submarine. But the sense of being watched, of being evaluated by something cold and ancient and hungry, lingered as they stepped into the next dark corridor. Chapter 3: The Silent Feast. The corridor leading towards the mess hall felt different. Colder, perhaps, though the temperature readings inside their suits remained stable. The pervasive thrumming from deep within the Hades seemed fainter here, muffled by distance or the thickening layers of mycelial creep. This phosphorescent growth coated nearly every surface, its pale, pulsing light casting their armored figures in stark relief. It climbed bulkheads, consumed control panels, and formed thick, ropey tendrils that snaked across the deck plating like grotesque vines. The air still stank, but the coppery tang of blood was overlaid with something else, a cloying sweetness, like overripe fruit left to rot underwater. Scattered debris littered the deck, overturned equipment, shredded pieces of furniture padding, shattered ceramic shards. Unlike the junction, there were fewer bones here but more signs of struggle. Long, deep gouges scarred the steel walls, some clearly made by tools, others by something sharp and organic. Dark smears trailed away from patches of greater violence, vanishing beneath the encroaching fungal carpet. "Looks like they put up a fight here," Gren observed, nudging a bent metal chair leg with his boot. "Didn't end well." "Resistance seems localized," Arin noted, aiming her scanner at a section of wall where the fungus pulsed erratically. "Biosignatures here are weaker, fragmented. Suggests intense conflict followed by absorption by the dominant biome." "The fungus eats the losers?" Jin asked, his voice strained. "Or incorporates them," Arin corrected absently. "The network expands, reprocesses organic material, highly efficient." Kyra ignored the commentary, her rifle sweeping the corridor ahead. Her gaze lingered on the ceiling vents, remembering the flicker of movement she thought she'd seen. The sense of being watched persisted, a prickling awareness at the back of her neck. "Unit 7, confirm route to Gamma 7 access." "Affirmative. Proceed 30 meters to mess hall entrance Delta. Access panel for crawlway Gamma 7 located on the aft bulkhead within the main mess hall chamber, adjacent to galley service hatch." They advanced cautiously. The silence was broken only by their own movements, the clink of equipment, the scuff of boots on the slimy deck, the rhythmic sigh of their suit recyclers. The mycelial creep seemed to absorb sound, muffling echoes, creating a dead acoustic space that felt profoundly unnatural deep within the metal confines of a submarine. The entrance to the mess hall gaped open, its double doors torn from their hydraulic hinges and cast aside like paper. Inside, the space was larger than the corridors, though still claustrophobic under the low ceiling. Long tables and benches were bolted to the deck, some overturned, others disturbingly intact. And on these tables sat the remnants of the last meal served aboard the Hades, or perhaps many meals. Plates and trays remained, but their contents were unrecognizable. Foodstuffs were fused with the ever-present mycelial creep, forming lumpy, pulsating masses of grayish-white growth speckled with phosphorescent dots. A half-eaten protein bar extruded fungal tendrils. A ceramic mug overflowed with a thick, slimy colony that pulsed in time with the walls. The cloying, sweet smell of decay was overpowering here. It wasn't just food rotting. It was a perversion of sustenance, a silent, ongoing feast where the fungus consumed everything. "Place is a damn Petri dish," Gren muttered, disgust coloring his tone. Kyra swept her lamp across the room. Shadows clung thickly in the corners, behind overturned serving carts and beneath the tables. Standing water pooled in low sections of the deck, reflecting the fungal glow with oily iridescence. Small, translucent shapes drifted in the deeper pools, shock jelly clusters. Arin identified them silently with a gesture of her scanner. Best avoided. "Gamma 7 access panel. Aft bulkhead," Kyra stated, pointing her rifle towards the far end of the mess. "Move sharp." As they navigated between the tables, Jin stumbled, his boot catching on something hidden beneath a layer of fungal slime. He cried out, falling heavily against a tabletop. The corrupted meal remnants on it shuddered. "Jin status," Kyra snapped, spinning around. "I'm I'm okay, Jin gasped, pushing himself up. His glove was coated in sticky residue from the table. Just tripped on this. He pointed his light down. It wasn't debris. It was a standard-issue engineering toolkit lying open on the deck, mostly overgrown. Several tools lay scattered around it. Gren moved closer, interested. "Hey, may be salvageable," he began, reaching for a heavy wrench that looked remarkably clean, almost untouched by the slime. "Wait," Arin warned sharply. Her scanner beeped insistently. "Gren, don't touch it, that wrench. The surface composition is wrong, it's not metal." Gren froze, hand hovering. He squinted at the wrench. It looked perfectly normal, solid steel reflecting the fungal light. Suddenly, the surface of the wrench seemed to flow. The metallic sheen dissolved, revealing a gray, putty-like substance beneath. It shifted, writhed, and then abruptly lashed out, not as a solid object, but as a pseudopod of viscous goo, aiming for Gren's outstretched hand. "Mimic mold," Arin shouted. Gren yanked his hand back just in time. The pseudopod slapped against his armored forearm with a wet smack, clinging for a second before retracting back into the main mass, which was already losing its wrench shape, becoming an amorphous blob of quivering gray slime. "Mother warned me about picking things up," Gren growled, checking his arm seals instinctively. "Damn mimics." "Environmental hazard noted," Unit 7 intoned. "Mimic mold, protean organism capable of replicating simple inanimate objects, attracted to residual biosignatures. Recommend caution when handling any unsecured items." "No kidding," Jin muttered, nervously wiping his contaminated glove on his thigh plating. They continued towards the aft bulkhead, giving overturned tables and suspicious debris a wider berth. The bulkhead was dominated by a large, sealed service hatch presumably leading to the galley, and next to it, almost hidden beneath a thick curtain of mycelial creep, was a smaller, rectangular panel marked MAG7. "There it is," Kyra said. "Gamma 7 access. Gren, get it open." Gren approached the panel, examining the thick fungal growth covering it. "This stuff is hardened here like cement." He tapped it with the head of his pry bar. It made a dull thud. "Gonna have to break through." "Quietly, if possible," Kyra instructed, scanning the mess hall entrances and the shadowed corners. "Don't want to announce our position more than we have." Gren grunted, selecting a smaller chisel tool from his kit. He began carefully chipping away at the hardened fungal mass around the panel's edges. It came away in brittle gray flakes, revealing the corroded metal beneath. The work was slow, the tapping sounds unnervingly loud in the silence. Jin kept watch on the main entrance, his sidearm raised. Arin monitored the environment, occasionally sweeping her scanner over the shock jelly pools. Unit 7 stood motionless, recording. Kyra watched Gren work, but her attention kept drifting upwards, towards the ventilation systems, towards the deep shadows. A faint scraping sound echoed from the direction of the galley service hatch. Kyra's head snapped towards it. Silence. She held her breath, listening intently. Nothing. Just the tap-tap-tap of Gren's chisel. "Hear that?" she subvocalized over the comms. Jin shook his head, eyes wide. Gren paused, listening. Arin tilted her head. Negative auditory contact, Warden, Unit 7 reported. Ambient noise levels unchanged. Kyra frowned. Maybe it was just the ship settling or her nerves. She motioned for Gren to continue. He resumed chipping, faster now. Finally, he cleared the edges of the panel. It was a standard dog latch mechanism, rusted but potentially functional. Gren fitted his pry bar. All right, stand clear. Might be pressure differential. He threw his weight against the bar. Metal screeched. Rust flaked away. With a final groan, 2 of the 4 latches gave way. The panel popped inward slightly, releasing a puff of foul, stagnant air. "Got it," Gren grunted, pulling the panel open just wide enough to see inside. Darkness. A narrow, cylindrical tunnel dropping vertically at first, then curving away horizontally. It was choked with more mycelial creep, but there seemed to be a passage through the middle. The air rushing out stank worse than anything they'd yet encountered: concentrated decay, ammonia, and something uniquely foul, like rotting fish left in stagnant bilge water. "Well, isn't that inviting?" Jin muttered. Unit 7, internal scan of Gamma 7. The android directed a narrow sensor beam into the opening. Crawlway dimensions restricted. Heavy internal growth of mycelial creep confirmed. Atmosphere consistent with surrounding environment but with elevated ammonia concentrations. Detect. Faint movement signature approximately 15 meters along the horizontal section. Small, multi-limbed. Possible vermin infestation or scuttler activity. Kyra considered this. Scuttlers in the crawlway were a risk, but the main engineering corridor was mined and likely watched. "Vermin or scuttler, it's the route we take. I'll take point. Jin, you're behind me. Arin, then Gren covering rear. Unit 7 follows Gren. Single file, tight interval. Lights disciplined. Move." Kyra clipped her rifle securely, checked her sidearm, and swung herself into the opening. The vertical drop was short, maybe 2 meters onto a slime-coated curve. She landed softly, her boots sinking slightly into the fungal matting. She shone her helmet lamp down the horizontal tunnel. It was barely wide enough for her shoulders, the walls pulsing faintly with the ubiquitous growth. The stench was nearly unbearable, even through her suit filters. "Clear below," she reported. "Jin, you're up." Jin hesitated for a moment, peering down into the darkness, then followed, landing less gracefully than Kyra. Arin came next, then Gren, who paused to wedge the access panel partially shut behind them, though it wouldn't seal completely. Unit 7 dropped down last, its metallic limbs finding purchase easily on the slick surfaces. They were inside the crawlway, confined, the air thick with spores and stink. The only way forward was through the tight, pulsing tunnel. "All right," Kyra whispered over the comms, her voice tight. "Move out, slow and steady." She started forward, half-crouching, rifle held low. The mycelial creep brushed against her suit, leaving greasy trails. Water dripped from unseen sources, echoing strangely in the confined space. 15 meters ahead, Unit 7 had detected movement. Vermin or something worse. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed from behind them, back in the mess hall. It was followed by a heavy, scraping sound, like something massive being dragged across the deck. Gren swore. What the hell was that? He tried peering back through the narrow gap of the access panel. Can't see anything. Wait. Another sound reached them, faint but unmistakable, traveling down the crawlway from the mess hall. A low, guttural clicking, rhythmic and wet. The same sound they'd heard outside crew berthing C, but this time, it wasn't coming from behind a sealed door. It sounded closer, and it was accompanied by slow, heavy footsteps. Then a new sound joined it, echoing from the darkness ahead of them in the crawlway. A frantic, high-pitched chittering, multiple sources, small, fast-moving. Warden, Jin's voice trembled, movement ahead and behind. Kyra felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. They were caught, trapped in a suffocating tube of rotting fungus with unknown horrors closing in from both directions. The silent feast was over. The hunters were converging. Chapter 4. Between Hammer and Anvil. Trapped. The word slammed into Kyra's mind with physical force. Ahead, the high-pitched chittering intensified, echoing in the suffocating confines of the crawlway scuttlers, closing fast. Behind, the rhythmic, wet clicking and heavy scraping sounds grew louder, closer. Something slow but powerful was coming from the mess hall. They were caught between Hammer and Anvil. "Gren, status rear," Kyra demanded, her voice tight but controlled over the comms, eyes fixed on the poolsing darkness ahead. "Clickers coming," Gren's gruff voice crackled back. "Sounds big, scraping against the sides. It's in the access tunnel now. Panel won't hold it for long." Unit 7, Analysis Forward Contacts. Multiple small signatures detected. Estimated 7 to 10 hostiles. Designation Scuttler Brood. Rapid approach vector. Collision imminent in approximately 15 seconds. No time to think, only react. Gren, hold the rear, use whatever you need, everyone else forward, we punch through the scuttlers. Move, move, move. Kyra surged forward, half crouching, pulse rifle spitting blue energy into the dark tunnel. The beam illuminated the first wave of horrors scrambling towards them. Scuttlers, smaller than the ones encountered at the junction but faster, their chitinous limbs finding purchase on the slime-coated walls and ceiling, eyes gleaming redly in her lamp beam. Jin stumbled behind her, firing his sidearm wildly. Too many. They're everywhere. Controlled bursts, Kyra snapped. Aim for joints, Arin weaknesses. Ventral surfaces, ocular clusters. Arin called out, crouched low behind Jin, her scanner active even as she drew her own sidearm. They seemed disoriented by direct light application. Kyra focused her helmet lamp directly at the lead scuttler scrambling along the ceiling. It recoiled, chittering, momentarily losing its grip. She fired, catching it in its softer underbelly. The creature exploded in a shower of ichor and chitin, raining down on them. Another scuttler lunged from the wall towards Jin. He screamed, firing point-blank. The shot went wide, ricocheting off the tunnel wall with a whine. Before the creature's snapping mandibles could find Jin's helmet, Arin fired precisely, hitting one of its multifaceted eyes. The scuttler shrieked, thrashing blindly, and tumbled onto the fungal matting. From the rear, Gren's voice barked, followed by the deafening roar of his heavy-caliber shotgun, grossly oversized for these confines. The sound slammed through the crawlway, momentarily drowning out the chittering and clicking. First warning shot. Thing didn't even flinch. It's pushing through the damn fungus. A heavy impact vibrated through the deck beneath their feet. The clicker. Unit 7. Support Gren. Sonic pulse rear vector. Kyra ordered, firing again, dropping another scuttler trying to flank them along the floor. Acknowledged. Deploying sonic pulse, focused rearward. Unit 7, bringing up the end of the line before Gren, rotated its torso. A section of its chassis opened, emitting a directed beam of high-frequency sound back towards the mess hall access. A low, guttural bellow of agony echoed from behind them, deeper and more resonant than the scuttler's shrieks. The heavy scraping stopped momentarily. Got its attention, Gren yelled. Bought us seconds, keep pushing. The forward scuttlers, momentarily confused by the sonic backwash and Kyra's focused lamp, pressed their attack again. Two darted low, trying to scythe at their legs. Kyra kicked one away, firing downwards. Jin managed to hit the other, the pulse bolt skipping off its carapace before finding a joint. It collapsed, legs twitching. The crawlway was becoming choked with smoke from weapon discharges, the stench of burnt chitin and the thick, sweet odor of the mycelial creep which seemed to be pulsing faster now, its light flickering erratically. The air felt heavy, thick with spores. Kyra felt a wave of dizziness, quickly suppressed. Focus. Move, she urged, shoving Jin forward. Keep firing, don't let them surround us. They pushed deeper, stepping over twitching bodies and through viscous puddles of scuttler gore mixed with fungal slime. The tunnel remained agonizingly narrow. Another scuttler dropped from the ceiling directly onto Jin's back. He cried out, flailing, dropping his sidearm. The creature's mandibles snapped inches from his faceplate. Kyra couldn't get a clear shot. Orin reacted instantly, grabbing a discarded scuttler limb, sharp and serrated, and jamming it upwards into the creature's exposed underside. It convulsed violently, releasing Jin, and Orin pushed it off him with surprising strength. It lay spasming on the deck. Jin scrambled away, retrieving his weapon, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Thanks, thanks. Eyes front, Jin, Kyra ordered. Only 2 or 3 scuttlers remained visible ahead, retreating slightly into the gloom. We're breaking through. Another tremendous impact from the rear. Metal screamed in protest. Warden, Gren's voice was strained. It's through the panel, it's in the crawlway proper, big, ugly, fused with metal. The wet, rhythmic clicking was closer now, horribly distinct. It was accompanied by the sound of something heavy dragging itself forward, tearing through the fungal growth. How close, Gren? 20 meters. Closing. Unit 7's sonics are pissing it off but not stopping it. Unit 7, prepare proximity charge. Gren, fall back towards us. Now, Kyra yelled. They couldn't hold both fronts. Gren fired his shotgun again, the roar momentarily deafening. Falling back, things shrugging off buckshot like spitballs. The remaining scuttlers ahead seemed to sense the larger threat approaching from behind. They chittered nervously and vanished around a bend in the tunnel. A temporary reprieve. Keep moving. Kyra pushed them forward towards the bend. Gren came stumbling backwards into view, Shotgun held ready, faceplate splattered with something dark. Unit 7 followed, turning to face the rear again. Proximity charge deployment authorized. Unit 7 asked calmly. Affirmative. Timed fuse 5 seconds. Deploy and move, Kyra ordered. Unit 7 extended a manipulator arm, placing a small, disc-shaped charge onto the pulsing fungal wall. A small red light began to blink. Charge deployed. 5-second timer initiated. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Go, go, go. Kyra shoved Gren past her, then Arin, then Jin. They scrambled around the bend as Unit 7 disengaged and followed, its metallic footsteps unnervingly calm. They rounded the corner just as the charge detonated. The crawlway behind them erupted in a flash of light and concussive force. The tunnel shook violently. Sections of mycelial creep were blasted away, revealing scorched metal beneath. A section of the ceiling collapsed inwards. A deep, enraged, multi-toned shriek echoed from the dust and debris, louder and more terrifying than anything they had heard yet. Did it work? Jin asked hopefully, peering back into the settling dust. Unlikely neutralized hostile, Unit 7 reported, analyzing the vibrations and auditory data. Passage momentarily obstructed. Structural integrity compromised. Recommend continued rapid movement. The enraged shrieking continued from behind the debris cloud, accompanied by furious, heavy impacts as the clicker tried to batter its way through the collapse. Kyra shone her light ahead. The crawlway widened slightly here, opening into a small maintenance junction. 3 other tunnels, equally choked with fungus, branched off. One ascended steeply, another descended into murky water, the third continued horizontally. Pipes and conduits lined the walls, coated in the ubiquitous slime. Which way, Unit 7? Kyra demanded, catching her breath. Access to engineering lower levels requires horizontal tunnel designation Gamma 7 Bravo. Third option. Right, Gren, Arin, watch the collapse. Jin, Unit 7 with me. Let's move before that thing digs itself out. They pushed into Gamma 7 Bravo. The air here felt even heavier, the spore concentration almost visible as shimmering haze in their lights. Kyra felt the dizziness return, stronger this time. She saw Jin sway on his feet. Arin, spore concentration. Arin checked her scanner, her own movement seeming slightly sluggish. Elevated, significantly, filters struggling. Psychoactive elements confirmed. Potential for auditory and visual hallucinations. Paranoia, impaired judgment. Great, Gren muttered from the rear junction. Just what we needed. How long till it affects us? Depends on individual metabolism. Suit filter efficiency. Dosage, Arin replied vaguely, distracted by a complex reading on her scanner. Suggest minimizing exertion, maintaining focus. A furious roar from behind them announced the clicker had broken through the debris. The heavy scraping and clicking resumed, closer now. No time for rest stops. Kyra gritted her teeth, fighting the growing disorientation. Move double time. They scrambled deeper into Gamma 7 Bravo. The tunnel remained tight, the fungus pulsing, the air thick and sweet. Kyra's heart hammered against her ribs. It felt like wadding through syrup. Were the walls closing in? Was the pulsing light getting brighter, whispering things just beyond the range of hearing? She shook her head, forcing the thoughts away. Spores, just the spores. Ahead, the tunnel opened abruptly, not into another junction, but into a larger space. They stumbled out, one by one, into what looked like a ravaged filtration control room. Machinery lay smashed, catwalks sagged precariously, and everything was draped in thick sheets of mycelial creep, which glowed more intensely here. Large, shattered pipes dripped viscous fluid onto the deck. And standing amidst the wreckage, seemingly waiting for them, was a figure. Tall, gaunt, draped in the tattered remnants of a senior officer's uniform fused crudely with patches of dark, leathery hide and chitin. Its limbs were unnaturally long and thin. Its head was tilted, regarding them with large, dark, unsettlingly intelligent eyes adapted for absolute darkness. It held a long, sharpened piece of metallic debris like a spear. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, just watched them emerge from the crawlway. The tactician. Behind them, the monstrous scraping and clicking echoed from the tunnel entrance. They were out of the crawlway, but they had stumbled from the hammer and anvil straight into the abattoir, receiving pen. Chapter 5, Spore-Kissed Sight. The filtration control room swam in the phosphorescent glow of the mycelial creep. Thick, veined sheets of it draped shattered machinery and sagged from broken catwalks overhead like morbid bunting. The air was thick, sweet and heavy, each breath through the suit filters feeling inadequate, tinged with the alien scent of the spores. Kyra blinked, trying to clear her vision. The edges of the room seemed to waver slightly, the pulsing light of the fungus creating phantom movements in her peripheral sight. Before them, utterly still amidst the wreckage, stood the tactician. Its gaunt frame, a horrifying blend of starved humanity and leathery, chitinous additions, remained motionless. The large, dark eyes, perfectly adapted to this Stygian realm, tracked their movements as they spilled from the Gamma-7 Bravo crawlway. It held the sharpened metal shard like a tribal spear, its tip gleaming wetly in the fungal light. It offered no sound, no aggression, only unnerving, intelligent assessment. Behind them, the enraged scraping and clicking of the pursuing clicker echoed from the tunnel mouth, a monstrous heartbeat counting down their borrowed seconds. Warden, Jin's voice was thin, reedy. He fumbled with his sidearm, aiming it unsteadily at the tactician. What? What do we do? Kyra forced herself to focus, pushing past the shimmering distortions at the edge of her vision. The spores. They were making coherent thought difficult, like wading through mental sludge. Fight or flight. The tactician blocked the most obvious path deeper into the presumed engineering sections. Fighting, it seemed suicidal. It hadn't survived this long by being stupid. Evading it. Where? The room was large but cluttered, offering cover but no clear escape routes except the tunnel they'd just exited and the unknown path beyond the creature. Hold position, Kyra commanded, her own voice sounding slightly distant to her ears. Weapons ready. Don't fire unless fired upon. Unit 7, analyze the hospital. Arin, scan for alternate exits, vents, maintenance hatches, anything. Analyzing, Unit 7 replied, its optical sensors focused on the tactician. Subject exhibits minimal overt aggression. Posture suggests observation and territorial defense. Biological readings indicate extreme metabolic efficiency, minimal energy expenditure. Enhanced sensory organs detected, likely auditory and low-light visual. Recommend avoiding sudden movements or direct sonic engagement without tactical advantage. Arin swept her scanner around the room, shielding her eyes momentarily as if the fungal light pained them. Scanning. High levels of structural compromise on upper catwalks. Multiple pipe breaches detected, caution advised. Fluid composition unknown, likely corrosive. Theirs. A large ventilation duct grill near the ceiling northwest corner. Possibly viable, but access looks difficult. The tactician shifted its weight almost imperceptibly. It tilted its head, and a series of soft, rapid clicks emanated from its throat. Too low for human hearing, perhaps, but Unit 7's sensors registered them. Subject emitting low-frequency vocalizations, Unit 7 reported. Possible communication attempt or signaling. As if summoned, a high-pitched chittering answered from the shadows near a collapsed bank of control consoles. A pair of scuttlers emerged, smaller than the ones from the brood earlier, moving cautiously into the tactician's periphery. They weren't attacking, merely flanking their leader. Reinforcements. "Okay, Plan B," Gren growled from the rear, glancing nervously back towards the crawlway entrance where the clicker's sounds intensified. "We don't have time for a starring contest. I can put a mine near that thing, draw its attention, then we break for the duct Arin spotted." "Negative," Kyra countered, shaking her head again to clear it. The room seemed to pulse more intensely. Too risky. It's anticipating aggression. Arin, the duct, how high? Approximately 5 meters. Access would require climbing compromised machinery or utilizing that partially collapsed catwalk section. Arin pointed a trembling finger. Suddenly Jin gasped, stumbling back. "Did you see that? The walls there, bleeding." He pointed frantically at a section of bulkhead thick with mycelial creep where viscous, dark fluid oozed slowly downwards. "Negative, Jin," Arin said, though her own voice wavered slightly. "That's a pipe breach behind the fungal layer. Stay focused. Spore effects." "It looked like blood," Jin insisted, eyes wide behind his faceplate. The tactician took a slow, deliberate step sideways, repositioning itself slightly, still watching them, its spear held ready. The flanking scuttlers mirrored its movement. It wasn't attacking, but it was controlling the space, funneling them. The scraping from the crawlway tunnel grew louder, accompanied by a heavy, wet thump. Then another. The clicker was close, very close. "Decision, Warden," Gren urged, shotgun aimed back towards the tunnel mouth. Kyra's thoughts felt scattered, the spores making threats seem both distant and overwhelmingly immediate. The duct. It was their only viable option besides confronting the tactician or being caught by the clicker. "All right, new plan. Arin, lead us to the duct access. Jin, Gren, covering fire if needed, suppressive only. Unit 7, provide tactical overlay for the climb. Move, now." Arin hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded, moving towards the northwest corner, scanner guiding her path around debris and pools of dripping liquid. Kyra followed, rifle up, eyes flicking between the tactician and the surrounding shadows. Jin scurried behind Kyra, while Gren began backing towards them, shotgun still trained on the tunnel. Unit 7 projected a faint green pathway onto the floor and the precarious-looking wreckage leading up towards the ventilation grill. The tactician watched them move, its head tilting again. It made another soft clicking sound. The two scuttlers responded instantly, not attacking the main group, but darting with incredible speed towards the base of the wreckage Arin was approaching. They began scrambling up the twisted metal, aiming to intercept her before she could reach the duct. "Scuttlers intercept course," Kyra shouted. "Gren, Jin, suppress them." Gren swore, spinning around. He fired his shotgun, the blast echoing thunderously in the confined space. Pellets shredded the fungal growth near one scuttler, causing it to lose its footing and tumble down. Jin fired his sidearm, shots going wide but forcing the second scuttler to jink sideways, slowing its ascent. Arin reached the base of the climb, a buckled console leaning against a sagging section of catwalk. She holstered her scanner and began to pull herself up, finding handholds on torn metal edges. The tactician finally moved decisively. It didn't charge. Instead, it lowered its spear and slammed the butt end hard against the deck plating. The sound wasn't loud, but it resonated through the structure. From high above, near the damaged ceiling, a section of catwalk, heavily encrusted with mycelial creep and weakened by corrosion, groaned loudly. Dust and chunks of fungal matter rained down. "Look out!" Kyra yelled, shoving Jin forward as a large piece of debris crashed down where they had been standing moments before. The tactician used the distraction. It moved with blinding speed, not towards the main group, but laterally, disappearing behind a large, intact filtration tank draped in fungus. "Where did it go?" Jin cried out, spinning around wildly. "Maintain focus. Arin, keep climbing," Kyra ordered, scanning the area where the tactician had vanished. Had it fled, or repositioned for ambush? Arin was halfway up the makeshift ladder of wreckage. The remaining scuttler, recovering from Jin's suppressive fire, renewed its climb, closing the distance. "Need covering fire," Arin shouted down, clinging precariously as the structure shifted under her weight. Gren aimed his shotgun but hesitated. Clear shots tough, might hit the dock. Suddenly, a section of the mycelial creep coating the large filtration tank bulged outwards. A pale, multi-jointed limb, the Watcher, integrated into the fungal mass, lashed out, not at the climbers but towards Gren. It snagged the barrel of his shotgun, yanking it sharply downwards just as he fired. The blast went harmlessly into the deck, showering sparks. "Damn it!" Gren roared, wrestling with the surprisingly strong limb. At the same moment, the monstrous form of the clicker finally emerged from the crawlway tunnel. It filled the opening, a grotesque nightmare of fused metal and bloated, abyssal flesh. Its head was a distorted parody of a human skull merged with the sonar dome of the sub, multiple milky eyes swiveling blindly. Its mouth was a vertical, jaw-like maw lined with rows of needle teeth, clicking wetly. One arm was mostly original submarine plating, bent and fused into a crude battering ram. The other was a mass of pulsing, tube-like tendrils ending in grasping claws. It dragged itself forward, roaring its frustration and hunger. "Clicker, it's here," Jin screamed, firing uselessly at its armored hide. Chaos erupted. Gren battled the Watcher's limb, gripping his shotgun. Arin scrambled frantically up the wreckage as the scuttler closed in on her legs. The clicker advanced ponderously into the room, its attention drawn by the noise and movement. Kyra felt her mind reeling under the sensory overload, the spores amplifying the panic, twisting perceptions. Where was the tactician? Unit 7 remained impassive. Multiple threats converging. Recommend immediate egress via ventilation duct Gamma 9. Probability of successful extraction for all personnel, 47.8%. Kyra ignored the calculation. She fired her pulse rifle at the scuttler menacing Arin, scoring a hit on its back carapace. It shrieked but kept coming, latching onto Arin's boot. Arin cried out, kicking furiously. The Watcher's limb abruptly released Gren's shotgun, retracting back into the fungal mass on the tank. Freed unexpectedly, Gren stumbled back, regaining his balance just as the clicker lumbered past him, focusing its blind hunger on Kyra and Jin. "Arin!" Kyra shouted but couldn't reach her. She fired again at the clicker, bolts splashing harmlessly off its fused plating. Suddenly, the tactician reappeared. It emerged silently from behind another piece of machinery, much closer to Arin's ascent path. It wasn't looking at Kyra or the clicker. It raised its sharpened spear, not threateningly but pointedly, aiming towards a specific spot on the sagging catwalk near Arin's handhold. It clicked softly, insistently. Arin, kicking at the scuttler chewing on her boot, glanced up, saw the tactician pointing. Her eyes followed the spear's direction. There, barely visible beneath the fungus, was a section of metal that looked different, less corroded, perhaps reinforced. A structural support. The clicker roared again, lunging towards Kyra. She dodged sideways, pulse rifle spitting energy. Gren added his shotgun blasts, aiming for the creature's maw. Jin huddled behind cover, firing sporadically. High above, Arin seemed to understand the tactician's silent instruction. Ignoring the scuttler gnawing her boot, she shifted her grip towards the spot the spear indicated. The catwalk groaned but held. She found a solid handhold. With a surge of adrenaline, she pulled herself upwards, kicking the scuttler loose. It fell, landing heavily on the deck below, momentarily stunned. Arin reached the ventilation grill, yanking at its rusted hinges. The tactician lowered its spear, its dark eyes shifting towards the oncoming clicker, then back towards the escaping humans. It made no move to stop Arin or attack the others. It simply faded back into the shadows behind the filtration tank, vanishing as silently as it appeared. Had it helped them? Or simply prioritized removing the clicker, the greater immediate threat to its territory? The spores made certainty impossible. "Arin, is it open?" Kyra yelled, dodging another clumsy swing from the clicker. "Almost," Arin grunted, straining against the rusted grill. "It's giving." With a screech of tortured metal, the grill tore open inwards. Darkness lay beyond. "Go get in," Kyra ordered. "Jin, you first." Jin needed no second invitation. He scrambled towards the wreckage, shoving past the stunned scuttler, and began climbing frantically. "Gren, cover us. Fall back when Jin's up." Kyra laid down, suppressing fire on the clicker, keeping its attention. Gren fired his shotgun point-blank into the clicker's clicking maw, eliciting a pained bellow. He started backing towards the climb, reloading rapidly. The clicker, enraged, ignored Kyra and charged Gren. Its fused metal arm swung like a wrecking ball. Gren tried to dodge, but the blow caught him a glancing impact on the shoulder, sending him sprawling backwards, his shotgun flying from his grasp. He landed hard near the base of the wreckage. "Gren!" Kyra screamed. The clicker loomed over the downed engineer, its maw opening wide, dripping corrosive saliva. Chapter 6: Labyrinth of Ducts. The clicker's shadow fell over Gren, its clicking maw gaping impossibly wide, dripping strands of viscous, corrosive slime. The stench of decay and chemical wrongness washed over the downed engineer. He scrabbled backwards uselessly, his shoulder screaming in pain where the blow had landed, his shotgun lying meters away. Death, blind and ravenous, leaned down. "Grenn!" Kyra screamed, overriding the rising panic induced by the spores. She emptied the remaining charge of her pulse rifle into the clicker's face at point-blank range. Blue energy bolts slammed into the fused metal and flesh around its multiple eyes, causing the creature to recoil with a shriek of agony, milky ocular fluid bursting from ruptured lenses. It bought seconds. "Unit 7, draw its fire. Maximum sonic output," Kyra yelled, simultaneously ejecting the spent energy cell and ramming a fresh one into her rifle. "Acknowledged," Unit 7 replied, stepping forward calmly into the clicker's path. Its chassis opened, unleashing a focused, piercing sonic shriek directly at the monster's head, executing targeted sonic disruption. The clicker staggered back, its massive head shaking violently, its own clicking cries becoming distorted, agonized. It swiped blindly with its tendril arm towards the source of the pain, thrashing against the android's assault. Unit 7 held its ground, adjusting the frequency, its metallic form absorbing the frantic impacts with resonating thuds. "Jin, are you in?" Kyra shouted upwards, seizing the momentary distraction. "In, Arin's pulling me through." Jin's panicked voice echoed down from the vent opening. "Gren, get up, move." Kyra rushed to the engineer's side, grabbing his arm, hauling him upright. He groaned, face tight with pain behind his faceplate. "Shoulder, dislocated, maybe broken," he gasped, clutching the injured joint. "Can't climb." "You will," Kyra gritted, practically dragging him towards the wreckage pile. "Arin, he needs help." Above, Arin peered down from the vent, her face pale even in the suit lights. "Secure a line to him. I can try to winch him." "No time." Kyra looked at the struggling clicker, still partially disabled but beginning to push through Unit 7's sonic barrage. "Unit 7, cover our ascent. Gren, use your good arm, push." She shoved Gren towards the buckled console, boosting him onto the first level of the wreckage. He scrambled awkwardly, his injured arm hanging uselessly, finding purchase with his boots and his good hand. Kyra climbed behind him, pushing him upwards, her rifle slung across her back. The clicker roared, finally shoving Unit 7 aside with a sweep of its metal-fused arm. The android slid across the slick deck but immediately regained its footing, deploying smaller, rotating energy emitters from its limbs. It laid down suppressive fire, bolts of energy peppering the clicker's hide, forcing it to focus its rage away from the climbers. Gren reached the sagging catwalk below the vent. Arin leaned out, extending a hand. "Grab on." Gren reached, fingers straining. Arin gripped his wrist, straining herself. Jin appeared beside her, adding his own strength. Slowly, agonizingly, they began hauling the heavy engineer upwards towards the dark opening. Kyra scrambled onto the catwalk beside them, pulse rifle back in her hands, firing downwards at the clicker, which was now trying to heave its massive bulk onto the wreckage pile. Its weight caused the entire structure to groan and shift precariously. "It's coming up," Kyra yelled. "Pull faster." With a final heave, Gren tumbled into the vent beside Jin and Arin. Kyra turned, fired one last burst at the clicker's advancing face, then leaped for the vent opening. Hands grabbed her, pulling her through just as the catwalk section beneath her boots gave way with a screech of tearing metal, crashing down onto the deck below. They were inside, all five of them crammed into the relative darkness of the ventilation shaft. Arin slammed the mangled grill shut as best she could, plunging them into near-total blackness, broken only by the beams of their helmet lamps and the faint, ambient glow filtering through seams from the mycelial creep outside. Below them, the clicker roared in frustration, its heavy impacts shaking the entire duct system. "Status report," Kyra gasped, leaning against the cold metal wall, fighting the lingering dizziness and the adrenaline crash. "All personnel accounted for," Unit 7 reported calmly from the rear of the cramped group. "Minor external damage sustained during engagement with hostile entity designation. Clicker. Systems remain operational." "Gren," Kyra shone her light on the engineer. He was slumped against the wall, cradling his injured arm, his breathing ragged. "Alive," Gren grunted. "Shoulders definitely busted, feels like fire." Arin was already examining him, her medical scanner active. "Severe dislocation, possible fracture of the humerus, pain levels critical. I can administer a broad-spectrum painkiller and attempt to stabilize it, but it needs proper setting." "Do it," Kyra ordered. "Quickly. We need to move before that thing finds another way up or something else finds us." The ventilation shaft was rectangular, barely a meter high and perhaps 1.5 wide. Dust motes danced in their lamp beams. The air tasted thick, stale, carrying the ubiquitous scent of decay and spores, perhaps even more concentrated here. Faint sounds echoed through the metal, dripping water, the distant thrum of the ship's heart, and closer than Kyra liked, scrabbling sounds within the walls of the duct itself. Arin worked swiftly, injecting a painkiller into Gren's suit port, and using medical tape and a salvaged piece of metal struck from the wreckage to create a crude but effective sling, immobilizing the arm against his chest. Gren hissed through clenched teeth but nodded grimly when she finished. "Better. Still hurts like hell, but I can move." "All right," Kyra said, sweeping her light down the duct. It stretched into darkness, seemingly straightforward for now. "Unit 7, lead the way. Guide us towards engineering, lowest probability of encountering hostiles. Acknowledged, calculating optimal route based on available schematics and sensor readings. Unit 7 moved to the front, its heavier footsteps strangely muted on the dusty metal floor. Proceed forward. Caution advised. Structural integrity varies, potential for obstructions or localized infestations. They set off, a miserable procession crammed into the tight space. Unit 7 led, followed by Erin, then Jin, then Kyra supporting Gren, who moved awkwardly with his injury. The darkness pressed in, relieved only by their lights. The scrabbling sounds within the walls seemed to pace them, sometimes receding, sometimes drawing closer. "What is that noise?" Jin whispered nervously, his lamp beam darting towards the walls. "Likely mutated vermin," Erin offered, though her voice lacked conviction. "The indigenous rat population, perhaps adapted to the vents, or bone weevils attracted to calcified fungal growth. Or scuttlers using the vents as highways," Gren muttered darkly. Kyra felt the spore-induced paranoia creeping back. Every shadow seemed to hold movement, every echo sounded like pursuit. Was the clicker finding a way to follow? Was the tactician watching them through unseen grills? She forced the thoughts down. Maintain control. The duct twisted, turned, dropped, and rose. Sometimes they crawled on hands and knees, sometimes they could crouch walk. At junctions, Unit 7 would pause, scan, and direct them, its synthesized voice calm and unwavering in the oppressive darkness. They passed other grills, some leading into pitch-black rooms, others blocked by thick, poolsing masses of mycelial creep that seemed to breathe softly in their lights. Kyra ordered them sealed or bypassed whenever possible. The air grew thicker, warmer. The scrabbling sounds became more insistent. At one point, passing a narrow vertical shaft intersecting their path, Jin yelped and pointed his light upwards. A mass of something fused bones, fur, multiple limbs and tails, all writhing as one flowed down the shaft like liquid nightmare, vanishing into a lower-level duct. The Rat King remnant. It ignored them, intent on some unseen destination, but the sight left Jin trembling. Gren stumbled frequently, leaning heavily on Kyra. The painkillers dulled the edge, but his endurance was flagging. Kyra kept up a steady stream of encouragement, mixed with commands, fighting her own growing disorientation. The patterns of light and shadow thrown by their lamps seemed to twist into grotesque shapes. She thought she saw faces in the corrosion patterns on the metal walls, heard whispers just beneath the hum of her suit's recycler. "How much further, Unit 7?" Kyra asked, her voice hoarse. "Approximately 50 meters to projected exit point into Engineering Auxiliary Maintenance Corridor 3B. Route integrity remains uncertain beyond the next junction." They reached the junction. It was wider here, allowing them to stand almost fully upright. 3 ducts branched off. Unit 7 paused, scanning. "Anomaly detected," the android stated. "Structural layout inconsistent with schematics in forward duct pathway Gamma 11. Significant bioorganic obstruction registered." Obstruction. Kyra shone her light down Gamma 11. The duct appeared blocked by a solid wall of the gray, coral-like growth they'd seen on the exterior hull and integrated into some of the mutated crew. It pulsed faintly. "Can we cut through?" "Negative." Unit 7 replied. Density exceeds plasma cutter capabilities available. Composition includes unknown metallic elements fused with organic polymers. Attempting to breach may destabilize surrounding structure or provoke defensive reaction. So it's a dead end. Gren slumped against the wall, breathing heavily. We came all this way for nothing. Alternative route. Unit 7 indicated the duct branching to the left. Pathway Delta 4 leads towards reactor compartment access. Increased radiological hazard potential. Higher probability of encountering significant hostile entities. Reactor, no way, Jin protested immediately. That's suicide. Third option, Unit 7 pointed right. Pathway Sigma 9, unknown destination, not present on original schematics, appears to be a recent formation or previously undocumented access tunnel. Kyra looked down Sigma 9. It was darker than the others, the metal strangely smooth, almost slick. No mycelial creep was visible within the range of her light. The air wafting from it felt different, colder, drier, and utterly silent. No dripping, no scrabbling, no distant thrum. Scan Sigma 9, Unit 7. The android directed its sensors. Minimal airborne particulate. Trace biological readings inconsistent with known biome. No structural hazards detected within initial 20 meters. Pathway origin and terminus unknown. A path not on the maps. A path seemingly untouched by the fungal infestation or the mutated crew. Was it a trap, a lure, or a genuine escape route missed by the horrors that stalked the rest of the sub? The spores clouded her judgment, making the unknown path seem both terrifying and strangely appealing. Warden, Arin prompted gently. Decision. Kyra looked at Gren, pale and sweating, at Jin, trembling visibly, at Arin, whose scientific curiosity seemed to be warring with exhaustion and fear, at Unit 7, impassive and waiting. Going towards the reactor felt like courting disaster. Going back was impossible. The blocked path was impassable. That left the unknown. Sigma 9, Kyra decided, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. We take the unknown path. Unit 7 take point. Maximum sensor sweeps. Stay alert for anything. Unit 7 turned without comment and stepped into the mouth of Sigma 9. The rest followed hesitantly, Kyra bringing up the rear, casting one last look back at the familiar, spore-choked darkness of the main ventilation system. The silence in Sigma 9 was absolute. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally on the smooth metal floor. The air felt clean, sterile, wrong. After only a few meters, the smooth metal gave way to walls covered in complex, non-Euclidean geometric patterns etched directly into the material, patterns that seemed to shift and writhe if stared at too long. The path began to descend steeply. Unit 7, Kyra whispered, the sound loud in the silence. What is this place? Analysis ongoing, Unit 7 replied. Architectural style inconsistent with human design parameters or known abyssal bioconstruction. Material composition, anomalous. Detecting faint energy signatures embedded within the walls, nature indeterminate. They descended deeper into the silent, patterned tunnel. The oppressive claustrophobia of the Hades remained, but it was overlaid with a new alien dread. This wasn't part of the submarine they knew. This was something else. Something hidden. Something the original crew, perhaps even the things they became, never found. Or perhaps something that found them during the phasing accident. The tunnel leveled out, opening into a space slightly larger than the duct junction. And in the center of that space, illuminated by their lamps lying discarded on the strangely patterned floor, was a single standard-issue Navy combat boot. It looked relatively clean, untouched by slime or fungus. But the foot and the leg it was attached to were still inside it, severed cleanly just above the ankle. There was no blood. The flesh at the severance point was smooth, almost cauterized, and subtly, disturbingly wrong. Chapter 7. The Geometry of Absence. The silence of Sigma 9 pressed down, amplifying the harsh rasp of Jin's breathing and the low-groan grin emitted as he shifted his weight off his injured shoulder. Their helmet lamps converged on the grisly object lying starkly on the patterned floor. The severed boot, the leg stump protruding obscenely from its opening. Jin gagged, stumbling back against the smooth, cool wall. No, oh gods, no. Gren stared, his face pale and grim. Clean cut, too clean. Kyra knelt, keeping her distance but examining the scene intently, pulse rifle held ready. The air in her suit tasted sterile, chillingly different from the spore-laden fug they'd become accustomed to. That very cleanliness felt menacing now. Arin, Unit 7. Analysis. Carefully. Arin approached hesitantly, her usual clinical detachment visibly shaken. She activated her scanner, the beam playing over the boot and the severed limb. Unit 7 stepped forward, deploying a finer, multispectral sensor array. Subject is male, Arin reported, her voice hushed. Remnants of standard-issue engineering undersuit visible. Boot designation corresponds to Petty Officer 2nd Class. Michelson assigned to reactor auxiliaries. Her scanner beeped softly. Tissue analysis confirms lack of exsanguination. Cellular structure at the severance point shows extreme thermal crystallization and molecular shearing. No tearing, no cellular disruption beyond the immediate plane of separation. It's like it was simply erased along that line. Energy weapon? Kyra asked. Possibly, Arin conceded. But the heat signature is negligible, almost cold. And the precision. It follows the geometric plane perfectly, regardless of tissue density, bone, muscle, fabric, boot leather, all severed identically. No known energy weapon produces such an effect without significant collateral thermal damage or blast radius. Unit 7 retracted its sensor array, confirming Dr. Arin's analysis. Severance pattern inconsistent with kinetic, explosive, or directed energy trauma modalities utilized by human or known abyssal entities. Closest theoretical match involves localized spatial distortion or high-frequency molecular resonance ablation, detecting residual chronoton particle decay, suggesting temporal or dimensional stress associated with the event. Spatial distortion, time particles, Jin whimpered. What does that mean? It means, Gren grunted, wincing as he adjusted his sling, that whatever cut off Michelson's foot wasn't using a knife, or a laser, something else. Kyra looked from the severed foot to the walls of the tunnel. The intricate non-Euclidean patterns etched into the smooth metal seemed to pulse faintly, a subliminal flicker at the edge of vision. They weren't just decorative. They felt functional, purposeful, deeply alien. Was this place a machine, a weapon, a scar left by the Hades passage through dimensions? Michelson, reactor auxiliaries, Kyra murmured. Did he come through here trying to escape, or did this thing come from the reactor area? The path Unit 7 had deemed too dangerous. Unknown, Warden, Arin said, withdrawing slightly from the severed limb. But the condition suggests the event was relatively recent. Minimal decomposition despite the altered cellular state. Recent, which meant whatever did this could still be active, could still be here. Kyra stood up, sweeping her light deeper down the descending tunnel. The patterned walls continued, curving gently out of sight. The silence remained absolute, broken only by their own sounds. We can't go back. Reactor route is suicide. Blocked path is impassable. This is the only way forward, but we proceed on maximum alert. Assume anything could be a trigger. Don't touch the walls. Watch the patterns. Stay focused. The spore-induced dizziness had faded in the clean air, but it was replaced by a different kind of mental strain. The sheer wrongness of the place, the sterile silence, the impossible geometry whispering at the edges of perception. It ground down the nerves in a slower, colder way. Unit 7, maintain continuous environmental scanning, Kyra ordered. Report any energy fluctuations, atmospheric changes, structural anomalies immediately. Acknowledged, continuous scan active. They moved past the severed foot, giving it a wide berth. Kyra took point again, Gren struggling behind her, leaning heavily on Jin for support now. Arin followed, her scanner constantly sweeping, while Unit 7 brought up the rear. Their boots echoed unnervingly on the smooth floor. The tunnel continued its descent. The geometric patterns on the walls became more complex, incorporating spirals and impossible angles that seemed to twist the perception of depth and distance. Kyra found herself concentrating hard just to place her feet correctly, fighting a rising sense of vertigo. After another 20 meters, the silence was broken, not by a creature but by a low, resonant hum. It wasn't mechanical, not like the Hades engines. It felt deeper, purer, emanating from the very structure around them. Energy signature increasing, Unit 7 reported. Source appears localized ahead. Hum frequency matches detected wall energy patterns. Recommend caution. The tunnel opened into another chamber, larger than the last. This one was circular, perhaps 10 meters across. The floor was the same smooth, patterned metal, but the walls were different. They weren't etched metal. They seemed to be made of solidified darkness, absorbing their lamp beams almost completely. Embedded within this blackness, like malevolent stars, were clusters of faintly glowing geometric shapes, cubes, tetrahedrons, dodecahedrons, pulsing slowly with internal light and emitting the low hum. And in the center of the room, floating perhaps a meter above the floor, was a distorted sphere of shimmering air, like heat haze over asphalt, but perfectly contained, utterly silent. It warped the view of the far wall, bending the light of the glowing polyhedrons behind it in unnatural ways. Gravitational lensing effect detected, Orin breathed, aiming her scanner. Localized spacetime distortion, extreme energy readings emanating from the sphere. Caution, approach could be hazardous. Scattered around the base of the floating distortion were more objects, not body parts this time, but equipment. A standard Navy toolkit, identical to the one the mimic mold had replicated, but this one looked compressed, parts of it sheared off cleanly along invisible planes. A datapad cracked, its screen displaying only static but bent at an impossible angle without shattering. A pulse rifle, twisted like taffy, its barrel melted and resolidified into a nonsensical shape. That's Sergeant Valnikov's custom rifle, Gren whispered, recognizing the warped weapon. He never went anywhere without it. What happened here? Jin asked, his voice barely audible. Kyra stared at the floating sphere, at the damaged equipment. This wasn't predation. This wasn't hunger. This felt like process. An automated system. A localized environmental hazard created by the Hades accident. Unit 7, can you analyze the sphere? Negative. Energy emissions overwhelming local sensors. Attempting remote penetration. Failure. Field appears impermeable to standard scanning frequencies. Nature and origin remain unknown. Recommend maintaining minimum safe distance of 5 meters. The hum intensified slightly as they watched. The sphere seemed to ripple. Did it react to us? Kyra asked sharply. Unknown, Unit 7 replied. Energy fluctuations within normal parameters. Kyra swept her light around the chamber. On the far side, another tunnel exit, identical to the one they'd entered through, promised continuation. But crossing the room meant passing near the sphere. We have to go around it, Kyra decided. Hug the wall, maximum distance possible. Unit 7, monitor it constantly. Alert us to any change. Slowly, carefully, they began edging around the perimeter of the room. The solidified darkness of the walls seemed to absorb their light, making the space feel infinite beyond their lamps. The glowing polyhedrons pulsed rhythmically with the hum, casting, shifting, complex shadows. Kyra felt the strange vertigo intensify near the walls, the patterns disorienting. As they reached the midpoint, directly opposite the sphere across the chamber, Gren stumbled, his injured shoulder throwing off his balance. He bumped heavily against the dark wall. The effect was instantaneous. The section of wall Gren touched flared blindingly white. The hum spiked into a painful, high-pitched whine. The floating sphere in the center of the room pulsed violently, its distortion field expanding rapidly. Gren, move, Kyra screamed, shoving him forward. The sphere's edge lashed out like a wave of pure force. It didn't hit them directly, but the spatial distortion washed over them. For a fraction of a second, Kyra felt an immense pressure, a sense of being stretched and compressed simultaneously. Her vision fractured into 1,000 geometric shards. Jin cried out, falling to his knees. Orin gasped, clutching her head. Gren collapsed entirely. Only Unit 7 seemed unaffected, planting its feet firmly, optical sensors flickering rapidly as it analyzed the event. The distortion wave receded as quickly as it came. The sphere returned to its previous size, its hum dropping back to the baseline frequency. The spot on the wall Gren had touched faded back to black. The immediate danger passed, leaving them reeling. "Status," Kyra demanded, pushing herself upright, her head pounding, vision swimming with afterimages of impossible shapes. Personnel experienced minor spatial shearing effects, Unit 7 reported. No immediate critical injuries detected. Gren requires assistance. Kyra helped the engineer struggle to his feet. He was shaking uncontrollably. "Felt like pulled taffy," he stammered. Jin was hyperventilating, staring at his hands as if expecting them to dissolve. Arin leaned against the wall, eyes closed, massaging her temples. System defensive reaction, Arin managed, triggered by physical contact with the wall. "Confirmed," Unit 7 stated. Physical interaction with wall emitters initiates localized energy discharge and distortion field expansion. Recommend ceasing all contact with chamber walls. Easier said than done in the disorienting darkness. They stumbled the rest of the way around the room, giving the walls and the now malevolent sphere as wide a berth as possible, hearts pounding. They reached the exit tunnel on the far side, piling into its relative safety with undisguised relief. Kyra looked back at the silent chamber, at the pulsing polyhedrons and the shimmering sphere. This wasn't a place of monsters. It was a place of physics gone mad, a hostile geometry ready to erase them from existence. "Let's get out of here," she breathed, turning towards the new tunnel. This section of Sigma 9 was subtly different. The smooth walls still bore geometric patterns, but they were less complex, sparser. The intense hum faded behind them, replaced once more by unnerving silence. The tunnel began to ascend gradually. After perhaps 30 meters, they saw light ahead. Not the pulsing glow of fungus or the harsh beam of a lamp, but a steady, pale illumination. "Source," Kyra asked Unit 7 quietly. "Unknown light source detected. Broad spectrum, low intensity. No associated energy signature matching previous anomalies." Cautiously, they approached. The tunnel ended abruptly, opening onto a wide ledge. Below them lay a vast cavernous space, far larger than any compartment on the Hades should be. It stretched away into darkness beyond the range of their lights, but the area directly below the ledge was illuminated by strange, phosphorescent patches growing on the floor and walls. Different from the mycelial creep, these glowed with a colder, bluer light and formed intricate, almost crystalline structures. And the floor of this cavern, some 10 meters below their ledge, was littered with bodies, dozens of them. Some were original crew members in tattered uniforms, seemingly untouched by mutation, lying as if they had simply fallen asleep. Others were hideously mutated figures, scuttlers, angler lurkers, even the bloated remains of what might have been other clickers, lying still and inert amongst their former shipmates. Interspersed with the bodies were drifts of the crystalline blue growth. There were no signs of violence, no blood, no severed limbs, just stillness. It looked like a graveyard, a silent, illuminated tomb hidden deep within the warped submarine. And standing motionless among the bodies, partially obscured by a large crystalline formation, was a single, tall figure. It wasn't human, nor did it resemble the mutated crew. Its form was unsettlingly slender, elongated, wrapped in what looked like shifting, shadowy bandages. It had no discernible face, only smooth darkness where features should be. It seemed to be observing the silent tableau before it. As their lights hit it, it didn't react, didn't turn. It remained perfectly still, a silent sentinel in a city of the dead. The finality of the scene, the sheer number of bodies, both human and monstrous, lying together in stillness, was profoundly disturbing. What had happened here? What was this place? And what was that silent, watching figure? Chapter 8: The Crystal Garden. The cavern stretched out below, a vast, silent necropolis bathed in the cold, blue light of the crystalline growths. The scale was wrong. No submarine compartment should possess such volume. It felt less like part of the Hades and more like a tumorous expansion, a hollow space carved out by forces beyond understanding, perhaps during the dimensional shear of the phasing accident. Their helmet lamps cut sharp paths through the gloom, illuminating row upon row of still figures scattered across the cavern floor. Humans in tattered uniforms lay beside the chitinous forms of scuttlers. The bloated corpse of something resembling the clicker, though smaller, rested near the skeletal remains of what might have been an angler lurker. Predators and prey, crew and monsters, all felled by the same silent hand, preserved amidst the eerily beautiful fractal structures of the blue crystals. The crystals grew directly from the deck plating, from the walls, and in some cases seemed to sprout from the bodies themselves, encasing limbs or partially covering faces in intricate, glowing lattices. Kyra stared, her mind struggling to process the scene. The spore-induced haze was gone, replaced by the cold, sharp dread of Sigma-9, and now this impossible graveyard. It defied explanation. No violence, no struggle, just cessation. "Report," she ordered, her voice hushed, unwilling to break the profound silence of the chamber. Unit 7's optical sensors swept the cavern methodically. Environment analysis. Atmosphere consistent with Sigma-9 pathway, minimal particulate, trace anomalous gases. Temperature stable at 4 degrees Celsius. Dominant feature: crystalline biological formations, designated Lapis fungus. Composition includes silicon dioxide, trace heavy metals, and complex protein structures emitting Cherenkov-like radiation. Radiation levels elevated, but currently within acceptable short-term exposure limits for shielded personnel. Erin directed her scanner towards the cavern floor. Life signs, negative across all detected bodies, confirmed biological cessation, cause of death, indeterminate from this distance. No visible trauma, the Lapis fungus, it seems, parasitic or perhaps saprophytic, growing on inert organic matter. The radiation signature is unusual, not ionizing in the typical sense. Their attention inevitably returned to the figure standing motionless among the dead. Tall, unnaturally thin, wrapped in shadowy bandages that seemed to shift and flow like smoke, it remained perfectly still, facing away from them towards the deeper recesses of the cavern. Its lack of a face was profoundly disturbing, just a smooth, dark oval where features should be. "The entity," Kyra prompted Unit 7. "Scanning central entity." Negative, the android replied after a moment. Entity does not register on thermal, biological, or standard electromagnetic spectrum sensors. Visual confirmation only. It absorbs or redirects active scanning frequencies. Object designation, sentinel. Analysis inconclusive. Origin unknown. Threat level indeterminate. It doesn't register. Jin breathed, pulling his gaze away from the figure. It's right there. Suggests advanced stealth capabilities, non-biological composition, or existence partially outside standard dimensional parameters. Unit 7 stated flatly. Gren shifted beside Kyra, his good hand gripping the edge of the ledge. Stealth tech, or just plain spooky. Whatever it is, it's standing in a boneyard it might have made. He looked paler, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cavern's chill. Warden, we gotta find a way out. My shoulder's starting to throb again. Painkillers are wearing off. Kyra nodded, tearing her eyes from the silent sentinel. He was right. Lingering here felt dangerous, like tempting fate in a place where existence seemed easily extinguished. Unit 7, scan for exits. Potential pathways towards engineering sections. The android rotated its torso, sweeping sensor beams across the vast chamber. Detecting possible structural egress point. Designation Cavern Exit Alpha, located on the far southeastern wall, approximately 70 meters from current position. Pathway appears consistent with modified submarine architecture leading towards aft compartments. Route requires descent to cavern floor and traversing the main body field. Traversing the graveyard, under the silent watch of the sentinel. Kyra weighed the options. Retreating back through Sigma 9 felt impossible, especially with Gren injured. This was the only path forward revealed so far. How do we get down? She asked. Ledge structure appears stable, Unit 7 reported. Natural slope formation approximately 15 meters to the left offers viable descent path to cavern floor. Minimal lapis fungus obstruction on slope. All right, new plan. Kyra took a breath. We descend. Arin take point with Unit 7, scan the path constantly. Jin assist Gren, I'll cover the rear. Minimum light discipline, helmet lamps only focus downwards. Avoid direct illumination of the sentinel. Move slow, move quiet. Do not touch the bodies or the blue crystals. Let's go. Unit 7 led the way towards the slope, its movements precise. Arin followed, scanner active. Jin carefully helped Gren, who moved stiffly, biting back groans of pain. Kyra came last, pulse rifle held at low ready, her gaze sweeping between the path ahead, the silent sentinel in the distance, and the oppressive darkness overhead. The slope was steeper than it looked, composed of buckled deck plating fused with the strange cavern wall material. Patches of the lapis fungus glowed faintly underfoot, cold to the touch even through their boots. They moved cautiously, testing each foothold. The silence amplified every scrape of metal, every breath sighed through recyclers. Reaching the cavern floor felt like stepping into a crypt. The scale of the space was immense from down here, the ceiling lost in darkness far above. The blue glow of the lapis fungus cast long, eerie shadows from the dozens of inert bodies scattered across the floor. Up close, the stillness of the dead was even more unsettling. A crewman lay slumped against a bulkhead, eyes wide open, a thin veneer of blue crystal creeping across his cheek. A scuttler lay on its back, chitinous limbs frozen mid-stride, its multifaceted eyes clouded and dim. There was no decay, only preservation within the cold, radiated light of the crystals. Arin paused near a human corpse, aiming her scanner intently. "Cellular stasis confirmed," she whispered over the comms, her voice filled with a mixture of horror and scientific awe. "The Cherenkov-like radiation from the lapis fungus. It seems to inhibit decomposition entirely, but it also induces rapid cellular crystallization at higher concentrations. It doesn't kill violently, it permeates, replaces biology with crystal, a slow petrification." "So stay away from the pretty blue stuff," Gren muttered, leaning heavily on Jin. They began picking their way through the field of bodies towards the far wall where Unit 7 indicated the exit lay. It was slow going, requiring careful navigation around corpses and dense clusters of lapis fungus. The sentinel remained motionless in the distance, a slender silhouette against the blue glow, still facing away. Yet, Kyra couldn't shake the feeling that it was aware of their every move. The silence felt charged, expectant. As they moved deeper into the cavern, the lapis fungus growths became larger, more elaborate, the blue light more intense. The radiation readings on Kyra's suit display ticked upward slightly. "Ambient radiation increasing," Unit 7 confirmed. "Approaching threshold for potential long-term biological effects. Recommend minimizing exposure time." "Acknowledged," Kyra said. "Keep moving." They were about halfway across the cavern now, perhaps 30 meters from the sentinel, though it remained facing away. They approached a particularly dense cluster of bodies and crystals, blocking their direct path to the exit. "Route adjustment required," Unit 7 stated, indicating a narrow path leading closer to the Sentinel's position. "Optimal path traverses within 15 meters of Sentinel entity." Kyra hesitated. Passing that close felt like walking into a predator's kill zone, even if the predator showed no overt hostility. But backtracking or finding another way around would take too much time, exposing them longer to the creeping radiation. "No choice," she decided grimly. "Stay tight, no sudden moves, keep your lights down." They altered course, entering the narrow path. The sentinel loomed larger now, its bandaged form seeming to absorb the surrounding light. They passed within 20 meters, then 18, then 15. Kyra held her breath, rifle tight in her grip. The sentinel did not move, did not turn, did not react. They navigated past its position, relief washing over Kyra, cold and sharp. They were through the riskiest part. The indicated exit point, a dark opening resembling a standard pressure door, was visible now, only another 20 meters ahead. Suddenly Jin tripped, off balance while supporting Gren. His foot caught on the outstretched, crystal-encrusted arm of a fallen crewman. He stumbled forward, crashing heavily into a large, waist-high formation of lapis fungus. The structure shuddered, emitting a bright flash of blue light and a distinct, high-pitched chime like struck crystal glass that echoed through the vast cavern. Instantly, everything changed. The low hum of the cavern seemed to intensify. The glow of all the lapis fungus formations pulsed brighter, in unison. And the sentinel moved. It didn't turn slowly. It didn't react with aggression. It simply shifted. Its entire body rotated instantaneously, impossibly fast to face them. The smooth, dark oval where its face should be was now fixed directly upon them, seeming to drink in their light, their presence. It raised one of its long, slender, bandage-wrapped arms, pointing not at Jin, who had disturbed the crystal, but directly towards the exit door they were heading for. "Warden," Arin gasped, stumbling back. "Threat assessment," Kyra demanded of Unit 7, rifle snapping up, aimed at the Sentinel's center mass. "Entity posture non-aggressive," Unit 7 reported, its sensors struggling against the lack of readable data. "Gesture vector indicates exit alpha, possible warning or direction." The sentinel held its pose, arm outstretched, pointing towards the door. The amplified hum of the cavern continued, the crystals pulsing brightly. Was it telling them to leave, warning them away from the door, or warning them about the door? The silence stretched, thick with menace and uncertainty. The exit was right there, salvation potentially meters away. But the silent guardian of this crystal graveyard had finally acknowledged them, and its attention felt colder and more dangerous than any shrieking monster they had faced so far. Chapter 9: Cost of Passage. The sentinel's arm remained outstretched, an obsidian finger pointing towards the dark rectangle of exit alpha across the silent, body-strewn cavern. The blue light from the lapis fungus pulsed around them, brighter now, casting their strained faces in cold relief. The air hummed, vibrating against their suits, against their teeth. "Warning or invitation," Arin whispered, her gaze fixed on the faceless entity. "Radiation levels climbing," Unit 7 reported dispassionately. "Projected time to reach critical exposure limits at current rate, 12 minutes." 12 minutes. Kyra looked from the impassive sentinel to the exit, then back at her depleted team. Gren leaned heavily on Jin, face contorted in pain. Jin himself was trembling, eyes darting nervously between the sentinel and the exit. Arin, though outwardly calm, kept glancing at her scanner readings with growing unease. "It hasn't attacked," Kyra reasoned, her voice low and tight. "It reacted to Jin disturbing the crystal, then pointed. If it wanted us dead, it likely could have done it already." We moved towards the door, slowly. "And if it is a warning," Jin asked, voice cracking, "if that door leads somewhere worse?" "Nowhere is worse than staying here to crystallize," Kyra snapped, forcing authority into her tone. "Unit 7, any change in the sentinel?" "Negative. Entity remains motionless. Gesture maintained." "All right, towards the door. Same formation, move." With agonizing slowness, they began the final 20-meter trek. Each step felt leaden. Kyra kept her rifle trained on the sentinel, walking backwards, covering their advance. The entity did not react. It simply stood, pointing, a silent, incomprehensible statue in its garden of crystal death. The hum of the cavern seemed to follow them, a low thrumming that resonated deep in their bones. They reached the exit. It was a standard submarine pressure door, surprisingly intact, though coated in a thin layer of the same cold, non-biological frost that seemed prevalent in the Sigma-9 tunnels. No mycelial creep grew here. The locking wheel was stiff but free of corrosion. "Gren, Jin, get the door," Kyra ordered, never taking her eyes off the sentinel. "Arin, Unit 7, watch our backs." Jin, despite his fear, fumbled with the wheel, his movements jerky. Gren, using his one good arm, added his strength. Metal groaned in the humming silence. Slowly, the heavy wheel turned. The locking dogs retracted with loud clunks that echoed unnervingly in the vast space. The sentinel remained still. With a final heave, they pulled the heavy door open inwards. Beyond lay not the expected corridor, but immediate, overwhelming heat and noise. The steady, powerful thrum of heavy machinery, the whine of turbines, the crackle of electrical discharge. The air that billowed out was hot, thick with the smell of ozone, hot metal, and something else. The familiar, sickeningly sweet scent of mycelial creep, but intensified, almost caramelized by the heat. "Engineering," Gren breathed, recognizing the sounds. "Confirmed," Unit 7 stated. "We have reached the primary engineering compartment, lower level. Extreme thermal and electromagnetic readings detected. Reactor containment appears unstable." Kyra risked a final glance back. The sentinel stood exactly as before, arm outstretched, pointing towards the door they now held open. Its purpose remained utterly opaque. Warning, direction, judgment. They would never know. "Move," Kyra commanded, pushing Jin and Gren through the doorway. "Get inside." Arin followed, scanner already active, eyes wide with alarm at the readings. Unit 7 entered last. Kyra backed through the doorway, pulling the heavy door shut behind them. The resonant hum of the crystal cavern was instantly cut off, replaced by the deafening roar of failing machinery. The locking wheel spun shut with grim finality, sealing them away from the silent graveyard and its guardian. They stood in what was unmistakably the lower engine room of the Hades, but it was a vision of technological hell. Emergency lights flickered erratically, casting strobe-like effects on machinery warped by intense heat and plastered with thick, pulsating masses of mycelial creep. This fungus glowed not blue, but a sickly yellow-orange, baked by the heat radiating from the deck plates and the massive, shielded cylinder that dominated the center of the compartment, the reactor housing. Arcs of raw electricity jumped intermittently from damaged conduits overhead. The heat was staggering, even through their suits. "Reactor containment breach imminent," Arin shouted over the din, readings flashing critical on her scanner. "Radiation levels spiking. Gamma, neutron flux. It's critical." But the reactor wasn't the only horror. The experimental drive core, housed further aft according to schematics, was visible through a buckled bulkhead. It wasn't a clean piece of machinery anymore. It looked like the mycelial creep had merged with it, poolsing organic matter intertwined with exotic metals and glowing conduits. Strange energies, similar to those felt in Sigma-9, warped the air around it, causing visual distortions. It looked like a beating, cancerous heart pumping poison into the ship. And defending it, standing amidst the chaos near the drive core, was the tactician. It looked even more gaunt, more desiccated in the fierce heat, its chitinous plating cracked, strands of its uniform smoldering. It held its sharpened metal spear, its dark eyes fixed on the intruders, burning with a fanatic gleam. It clicked rapidly, a sound barely audible over the machinery's roar. Target sighted, Kyra yelled, raising her rifle. Tactician. Before she could fire, Unit 7 stepped forward. Warning, engaging hostile entity secondary. Primary threat, imminent reactor core meltdown. Estimated time to catastrophic failure, 4 minutes. The android turned towards a damaged control console near the reactor housing. Auxiliary escape pod access located adjacent compartment, Deck 3. Access requires stabilization sequence input via this console. Probability of success low due to system damage. Stabilize it, Kyra ordered desperately. Buy us time. Negative, Unit 7 replied calmly. Stabilization protocols corrupted. Attempting interface for emergency systems access and escape pod deployment. Manipulator arms extended, plugging interface cables into scorched data ports on the console. Sparks flew. The tactician reacted. It ignored Kyra and the others, instead lunging towards Unit 7 with surprising speed, spear leveled. It seemed to understand the android was trying to interfere with the ship's systems, perhaps even the drive core it seemed to guard. Protect the android, Kyra screamed, firing her pulse rifle. Bolts hit the tactician's flank, staggering it. Gren, despite his injury, drew his sidearm with his good hand, firing wildly. Arin added shots from her own weapon. Jin huddled behind a piece of machinery, paralyzed by fear. The tactician hissed, a dry, rasping sound, momentarily driven back from Unit 7. It retreated towards the warped drive core, using machinery as cover, its dark eyes darting between them, seeking an opening. It was intelligent, dangerous, and defending its perceived territory or power source. Unit 7, status. Kyra yelled over the firefight and the reactor's scream. Interface established. Attempting to bypass damaged relays. Security protocols resisting. Override codes accepted. Accessing emergency escape systems. Pod 3 launch sequence initiated. Requires manual confirmation from pod internal controls. Unit 7's synthesized voice remained level, but sparks now showered from its joints as internal systems overloaded. Warning: reactor containment failure progressing exponentially. Meltdown inevitable. Recommend immediate evacuation. Where's the pod access? Kyra demanded, firing another burst that forced the tactician back behind cover. Unit 7 pointed a sparking manipulator arm towards a ladder leading upwards through a ceiling hatch. Deck 3. Compartment 3 Echo. Proceed immediately. Jin, Gren, move. Kyra shoved Jin towards the ladder. He scrambled upwards without hesitation. Gren followed, hauling himself up painfully with his good arm. The tactician chose that moment to attack again. It darted from cover, ignoring the pulse fire, and threw its spear with uncanny accuracy. It wasn't aimed at Kyra, but at the ladder Jin and Gren were ascending. The sharpened metal shard embedded itself deep in a rung just below Gren's feet, blocking further ascent. "Damn it," Gren yelled, unable to climb past the obstruction with his injury. Kyra fired relentlessly at the tactician, forcing it back once more. "Arin, get up there, help Gren pass the spear." Arin nodded, holstering her weapon and starting up the ladder. As she reached Gren, trying to help him maneuver around the spear, the tactician lunged from behind a different console, moving with desperate speed towards Unit 7, still locked into the failing control panel. Unit 7, disengage, Kyra shouted, realizing the tactician saw the android as the key. Negative, Unit 7 replied, sparks erupting from its head casing. Launch sequence authorization requires continuous connection. Core temperature critical. Detonation imminent. The tactician slammed into Unit 7, driving the tip of a broken metal strut it had snatched up into the android's torso. Unit 7 staggered, internal lights flickering violently. Yet, it remained connected to the console. Kyra knew she couldn't save the android and ensure the others escaped. A cold certainty settled over her. Arin, Gren, Jin, get to the pod, seal the hatch, launch on my command. Warden, no. Arin cried down from the ladder. Gren cursed, trying uselessly to climb faster. Kyra ignored them. She turned her full attention to the tactician, which was now furiously trying to rip Unit 7 away from the console. She charged forward, pulse rifle blazing. The tactician turned, surprised by her direct assault. They met in a flurry of motion amidst the failing machinery and arcing electricity. Kyra fired point-blank, emptying her energy cell into the creature. It shrieked, stabbing blindly with the metal strut. One blow glanced off Kyra's helmet, sending stars across her vision. Another pierced the armor on her leg. Pain flared, hot and sharp. She fell back, rifle useless, drawing her combat knife. The tactician, wounded and enraged, lunged again. Behind it, Unit 7 finally detached from the console, its optical sensors flickering out. Escape pod launch sequence, authorized. The android's voice crackled, distorted as it collapsed onto the deck. Mission priority, survival. Its lights went dark. Kyra met the tactician's final lunge, jamming her knife upwards into the creature's desiccated torso as its makeshift weapon stabbed towards her throat. There was a wet, tearing sound. The tactician shuddered violently, its dark eyes locking onto hers for a fleeting, horrifying moment, a flicker of recognition, of pain. Then its grip loosened and it collapsed atop her. Kyra shoved the body off, scrambling backwards, legs screaming in agony. The entire compartment shuddered violently. Red warning lights flashed everywhere. A klaxon blared, deafeningly loud. The reactor housing began to glow cherry red. Meltdown. Kyra, Arin's voice, tinny over the comms from the escape pod hatch above. We're in, seal the door. Launch, Kyra screamed, dragging herself towards the ladder, ignoring the searing pain. Launch the pod, that's an order. She heard the clang of the internal pod hatch sealing, the whine of pressurization. She started hauling herself up the ladder, rung by painful rung. Below, the reactor's light intensified, casting monstrous shadows. The drive core pulsed erratically, reality itself seeming to fray around it. Could she make it? The pod needed seconds to detach and launch. Seconds she might not have. The deck plating beneath the ladder began to buckle upwards from the heat. With a final surge of adrenaline, she reached the top, lunging for the emergency hatch release lever just as the escape pod fired its explosive bolts, rocketing upwards through its launch tube towards the surface. The outer hatch slammed shut below her. Darkness, crushing pressure, roaring heat. And then oblivion. The escape pod breached the surface violently, bobbing on the gray, choppy waves of a desolate sea miles from anywhere. Rain lashed its viewport. Inside, Arin frantically checked seals, her breath fogging the cold metal. Jin huddled in a corner, sobbing uncontrollably. Arin paused, catching her breath. She looked down at her gloved hand, remembering the cold touch of the lappy's fungus. Slowly, hesitantly, she pulled off the heavy suit glove. Beneath it, tracing the lines of her veins, almost invisible against her pale skin, was a faint, intricate pattern of crystalline blue. It pulsed with a barely perceptible, cold light. She stared at it, horror and a terrifying spark of fascination warring within her. They had escaped the Hades, but the cost was etched into her very flesh. Beneath the waves, the corrupted submarine, their tomb and their crucible was gone, imploded into wreckage and ruin. Yet Arin wondered, staring at the alien pattern on her skin, had a piece of its impossible horror surfaced with them. The ocean stretched vast and empty around their tiny pod. Rescue was uncertain. Survival was provisional. And the silence held no comfort. The end.